On January 14, 2024, under a low sky laden with symbolism, the Danish people pause to witness an event that history will never forget, the enthronement of King Frederik X. A date etched in their memories, a day of rupture and continuity, when the winds of change blew with rare intensity across the ancestral stones of Christiansborg Palace in Copenhagen. That day, one voice fell silent, that of Queen Margrethe II, and another rose up, that of her son, Frederik, now king. But behind the crowns, the scepters, and the cheers, what really happened in the corridors of power? It all began well before the solemn hour, in the apparent calm of the palace, where gestures were measured, emotions contained, and gazes scrutinized. Frederik, erect, dressed in a blue uniform adorned with insignia and decorations, knew that every minute brought him closer to a moment he dreaded as much as he anticipated. At his side, Mary, his partner, his lifelong love, was the only one who could read what no one else perceived: the anxiety, the responsibility, and the immense legacy he was about to bear. Outside, the crowd had gathered by the tens of thousands. Danes of all ages, waving red and white flags, some with tears in their eyes, others with hearts swollen with pride. They waited to see, to experience, to participate in the moment when their future would be written. For an enthronement is never a simple ritual. It is a founding act, a renewed link between the people and their sovereign, between a tradition and a future. The decisive moment occurred shortly after noon. Queen Margrethe, in a gesture of rare political and personal elegance, officially abdicated after more than 50 years of reign. A decision announced a few weeks earlier, which had shocked all of Denmark. Margrethe II, that erudite, popular monarch, respected throughout Europe, left the stage voluntarily, with dignity and gratitude. It was in the same palace, a few floors below, that she signed the act of abdication, in a silent room where even the walls seemed to hold their breath. And then Frederik stepped forward. On the balcony of Christiansborg Palace, where Danish queens and kings had spoken for generations, he presented himself to the people. In a firm, calm voice, he declared, "I promise to govern according to the constitution and the laws of the realm." That was it. No frills, no long speech. A simple, powerful, solemn promise. The people responded with cheers, with applause, with palpable emotion. At his side, Mary appeared, radiant and moved, in a pristine white gown. She needed no words. Her gaze toward Frederik spoke volumes. Denmark wasn't just electing a king. It was welcoming a couple. A union that, for 20 years, had embodied stability, modernity, and elegance. Their complicity, visible even in the most discreet gestures, gave the day a rare touch of humanity. This was no fairy tale. It was the reality of a couple who would, together, bear the burden of the crown. But this transition was not just a matter of protocol. It was also profoundly political, social, and cultural. Frederik X ascended the throne in a world in turmoil. European monarchies were scrutinized, sometimes contested. The Danish king knew he must embody continuity without rejecting change. He inherited a respected institution, but also immense pressure. How to reign in a modern, egalitarian country, sometimes skeptical of its monarchical heritage. During that day, every image was analyzed, every word interpreted. When he greeted the former members of the government, when he took his wife's hand, when he posed for the official photo, everything became symbolic. And it is precisely there that we measure the significance of such a day. Nothing is trivial when it comes to royalty. The monarchy is made up of rituals, but also of stories. And on January 14th, a new story began. In the hours that followed, messages of support poured in. The kings and queens of Europe greeted Frederik X. King Willem-Alexander of the Netherlands, Queen Matilda of Belgium, King Felipe VI of Spain, Charles III of the United Kingdom, all sent their best wishes, aware that each royal transition is also a moment of cohesion between royal houses, a shared chapter in European history. The new generation of sovereigns is taking up ever more space. And Frederik X, with his sober career, his military experience, his appreciated discretion, is already establishing himself as one of the faces of this new era. And yet, despite the apparent serenity of the event, a dull tension pervaded the atmosphere. For every change brings its share of unknowns. Is King Frederik ready to shoulder the symbolic, social, and diplomatic burden of a monarchy in flux? Will he live up to the expectations of a people who, even though they love their kings, now demand that they be exemplary, useful, and connected to reality? Across Copenhagen, the streets gradually emptied. Flags hung from balconies, still fluttered. Television screens replayed the day's highlights on a loop. But behind the scenes, the royal machine was already in motion. The next day, Frederik X had a meeting with his first projects. A king does not rest. He embodies. He reassures. He inspires. This is the challenge of this new reign. And what about Mary? Once a young Australian woman who fell in love with a prince during the Sydney Olympics, she is now queen. She has won the hearts of the Danes with her simplicity, her commitment to social causes, and her natural poise. Her presence at the inauguration, calm and dignified, was also a declaration. She will not be in the shadows, but in the spotlight of the new reign. Together, they form a formidable duo, as symbolic as they are human. This day of January 14, 2024, will remain a turning point. Not only for Denmark, but for all those who follow, directly or indirectly, the destiny of modern monarchies. The story of Frederik X is only just beginning. And it promises to be both faithful to the legacy of Margrethe II and deeply rooted in the challenges of the present. As night fell, Christiansborg Palace shone brightly. Within its centuries-old walls, a new era had dawned. And in the hearts of the Danes, one question resonated: what kind of king would Frederik X truly be?